The encounter in the forest. The forest was alive with strange sounds, yet filled with silence that pressed on the heart of anyone who walked inside. Dark vines hung down like snakes, glowing flowers opened and closed as if they could breathe, and the ground was soft with moss that hid sharp stones underneath. It was not earth, and no human should have walked here alone, but one soldier did. He was tired, his uniform torn, and his boots heavy with mud. For days, he had been separated from his unit, moving without food, moving without rest, only following the faint hope that he could find safety. Every step was a fight between strength and weakness. His stomach growled louder than the insects, louder than the echo of beasts in the distance, yet still he moved forward. The soldier's name was not important now, because in the endless green jungle, he was no longer a man of rank or duty. He was simply a human, fragile, small, and alone among giants. His eyes searched carefully, his ears always alert, but even his training could not prepare him for what he saw next. Between two twisted roots, under the shadow of a massive alien tree, something small moved. At first he thought it was a trick of light, a shifting of leaves, but then he heard it. A faint cry, weak and broken. It was not the call of an insect nor the growl of a predator. It was the cry of a child. The soldier stepped closer, pushing branches aside with his trembling hands. There, curled into a small ball, was a creature unlike any he had seen. It was tiny, no bigger than a human toddler. Its fur was thin, patches missing from hunger, its ribs showing with each shallow breath. Two glowing eyes looked up at him, eyes that were too big for its thin face, eyes filled with both fear and hunger. He froze, his heart beating fast. He knew what it was, or at least what species it belonged to. It was an alien cub, the kind that grew into deadly hunters, the kind that even armed soldiers avoided in groups, the kind with mothers who were feared more than tanks, and yet here it was, alone, starving, and crying weakly for help. The soldier's hand went to his pocket. Inside, hidden and saved for last, was a ration bar. He had planned to eat it later, to keep his own strength alive for one more day. But now, as he looked at the cub, he felt a strange weight in his chest, something more than survival. Slowly, carefully, he unwrapped the ration bar. The silver paper crinkled in his fingers. Loud in the silence of the jungle, the cub's ears twitched, its nose lifted, catching the scent. It whimpered, weak but hopeful, crawling just a little closer. The human bent down, placing the food on the ground, not too far from the creature. His hand stayed open, showing he carried no weapon. He did not move, he only watched. The cub's glowing eyes never left his face. For long moments it did not move, torn between fear and hunger. Then, with shaking legs, it crawled forward and bit into the ration. The sound was small, desperate chewing. The soldier watched in silence, his throat tight. He could feel his own hunger biting inside him. But it did not matter now. For a brief second, he felt something human. The sense of protecting the weak, the old instinct to care for a child even if it was not human at all. The cub finished quickly, licking the wrapper as if it could find more. It looked up at him again, its glowing eyes softer now, less afraid. It made a small sound. Not a growl, not a hiss, but almost like a purr. The soldier smiled, though only for a moment, because in the shadows he felt something else. The forest went still. No insects sang. No leaves moved. The air itself seemed to grow heavy. The soldier's skin crawled as the back of his neck burned with instinct. He was being watched. Slowly he turned his eyes toward the dark line of trees beyond the cub. There, hidden but not invisible, two larger glowing eyes stared back at him. Not small, not weak, not starving, but wide, powerful, and filled with fire. The human's breath caught, his chest tight with fear. He knew what those eyes belonged to. The cub had not been alone. The mother was here. A dangerous kindness. The human soldier did not move. His body froze as those two larger eyes glowed in the dark, staring at him without. Blinking, the cub, still licking the empty wrapper, did not understand the danger. But the soldier did. Every instinct inside him screamed to run, yet his legs felt like stone. The mother stepped forward, her shape slowly rising from the shadows, and with each step the forest seemed smaller. She was massive, her fur striped with glowing lines like fire under her skin. Her claws sank into the soil as if the ground itself feared her. Her head lowered, lips pulling back to reveal fangs as long as a man's arm. The soldier's heart pounded so hard he thought the sound might draw her attack. He had seen alien beasts before, but never this close. Never when his weapon was out of reach, and never when he was completely alone. Yet he also saw something else. The cub. It stood between them, its small body pressing toward him, as if begging its mother not to attack. The mother tigress let out a deep growl that shook the leaves above. Her eyes locked onto the human. She could smell her cubs, hunger fading, replaced by the strange scent of human food. Her nose twitched, recognizing something unfamiliar, something she did not know was dangerous or kind. The soldier slowly lifted his hands, palms open, showing he carried no weapon. His breaths were sharp, his voice low as he whispered, "I don't want to hurt you." Of course, the tigress did not understand human words, but she understood tone, and his voice carried no threat, only calm. From his pouch he pulled out the second-to-last ration bar he had. This was all he had left to survive another day. But his choice was not about survival anymore. It was about trust. He unwrapped it slowly, letting the silver shine in the dim light. The sound made the tigress's ears flick, her eyes narrowing. Then, in one slow motion, he placed the bar on the ground. Just as he had done for the cub, he did not throw it, he did not move away quickly. He only set it down. Then he sat back, lowering himself until he was almost kneeling, making himself smaller, less threatening. The cub squeaked, stepping forward again, sniffing the food. But this time the tigress growled, pushing the cub back with one sweep of her tail, her nose lowered to the ration bar, sniffing. Her fangs glistened with saliva. For one long moment it seemed she might strike him instead of taking the gift. The human swallowed hard, his throat dry. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of the cub's small whines. Finally, the tigress opened her mouth and bit into the ration bar. Her teeth crunched through the small block of food as if it were nothing. She chewed, swallowed, and then looked back at him. The soldier's chest tightened. He could not tell if he had just saved himself or only delayed the attack. But the tigress did not lunge. Instead, she sat down, her huge body blocking the moonlight. The cub crawled between her paws, pressing against her fur for comfort. The soldier exhaled slowly, his breath shaking. He realized he was still alive, though danger had not passed. In fact, it had only changed. The tigress was not attacking, but she was watching, every movement he made, every twitch of his fingers. Her eyes followed. The cub broke the tension by padding forward again, its tiny paws silent on the mossy ground. It climbed onto the soldier's leg, curling up against his torn uniform. The soldier froze, his heart pounding again, but the tigress did not strike. Her eyes narrowed, but she allowed it, perhaps because she saw her child no longer afraid. Soldier placed his hand slowly on the cub's back, feeling its thin body rise and fall with each breath. The cub purred softly, its small voice echoing strangely in the alien jungle. The sound was innocent, pure, and it carried into the night. For the first time in days, the soldier's loneliness broke. He was no longer just a lost human in the forest. He was a guardian, even if for a creature not of his kind. The tigress shifted slightly, her massive body stretching out on the moss, her tail curled protectively around the cub, brushing against the soldier's boot. It was a warning as much as it was acceptance. She was allowing this strange bond, but he was never to forget her power. Hours passed. The soldier dared not move too much, only enough to breathe and keep his eyes open. The cub slept against his side, its warmth strange but comforting. The tigress never closed her eyes, her gaze fixed on him through the long night. The forest returned to its rhythm, insects singing again, creatures moving in the shadows. But in that small circle of firelight, there was only one truth. A human had fed the cub and the mother had not killed him. It was not peace, not yet. It was something more dangerous, a fragile balance, a dangerous kindness. And the soldier knew, if he made even one mistake, the jungle would never hear his voice again. The mother's arrival. The jungle was never silent, yet in that moment it felt like the entire forest was holding its breath. The soldier sat frozen, his hand resting lightly on the cub that had curled against him. Across the firelight, the tigress. Mother crouched low, her glowing stripes pulsing faintly with each slow heartbeat. Her massive head tilted, her sharp teeth glinting under the pale alien moon. She had accepted the food, yes, but acceptance was not the same as trust, and trust was not the same as safety. The human knew this. Every muscle in his body ached to run, but running meant death. So he stayed, calm on the outside though his heart thundered inside his chest. The tigress moved suddenly. Her body rose in one smooth, powerful motion. Her paws struck the ground with a weight that made the moss tremble. The soldier stiffened as she began to circle him. Each step was slow, deliberate. Her golden eyes never left his face. The cub whimpered softly, glancing between them both as if confused. It pressed closer to the human's leg, but the tigress flicked her tail, and the cub obediently stepped back. It was as if the cub, too, was being tested. The soldier understood. This was no ordinary animal. This was a mother, a guardian, and a ruler of her world. She was not simply watching him. She was judging him. Every movement of his hands, every breath he took, carried meaning to her. He lowered his gaze slightly, keeping his palms open and visible. Slowly, carefully, he reached into his pouch. He pulled out his last ration bar, the one he had sworn to keep for himself. His throat tightened as he unwrapped it, the silver crackling loudly in the night. The tigress froze at the sound, her ears flicking back, her body lowered, ready to strike if he moved too fast. The human did not flinch. Instead, he set the ration bar gently on the ground between them, not closer to him, not closer to her, right in the middle, an offering, a choice. The tigress's nostrils flared, the scent reaching her. She stepped forward, claws sinking deep into the moss. Her fangs glistened as she leaned down. For a tense heartbeat, it seemed she would ignore the food and leap for him. But, instead, she lowered her head and sniffed. Her tongue flicked out, tasting the strange human gift. Then she ate, swallowing in a single bite. The soldier let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. But relief was short, because now the tigress prowled closer to him. Closer than she had ever been. Her face was so near he could see every scar across her muzzle, every crack in her fangs. Her breath was hot and smelled of iron and wild meat. She sniffed his chest, his hands, his face. The soldier's body screamed to recoil, but he forced himself to stay still. Any sudden move would mean his throat torn, open before he could blink. The cub, brave in its innocence, padded over again and pressed against the soldier's arm. It purred, soft and trusting. The tigress's eyes narrowed at the sight. Her tail lashed once, striking the ground like a whip, but still she did not attack. The soldier felt the truth in that instant. She was not deciding whether he was prey. She was deciding whether he was worthy. Minutes stretched into eternity. Finally, with a low rumble deep in her chest, the tigress stepped back. Not far, just enough to show she had chosen not to kill. For now, he was tolerated. The soldier's shoulders sagged in quiet relief. His body trembled, but he did not let it show in front of her. He knew the line between life and death was as thin as a whisper. The cub yawned and curled again against his leg. This time the tigress allowed it. Her eyes burned in the darkness, but there was something new in them. Not mercy, not yet, but recognition. The soldier built a small fire with the few sticks he had gathered. The flames flickered, casting strange shadows across the alien trees. The tigress did not leave. She lay down just beyond the firelight, her head resting on her paws. Her gaze never left him. The cub slipped into sleep, its small body warm against his side. The human sat awake, too afraid to rest, but also strangely calm, because in that dangerous company he was no longer entirely alone. As the alien night stretched on, the soldier thought of his unit, his mission, his world. But those thoughts felt far away, almost unreal. What was real was here. The cub's trust, the tigress's watchful eyes, the thin balance of survival. The forest whispered around them. The sound of wings, the cries of unseen beasts, the rustle of life everywhere. But the soldier knew the greatest danger was not in the shadows. It was beside him, breathing, watching, waiting. And yet, he felt a strange certainty in his heart. A certainty that this encounter was only the beginning, that something greater was unfolding. A bond neither human nor alien had ever dared before. The tigress blinked slowly, her glowing stripes dimming as if the firelight soothed her rage. For the first time, she looked less like a predator and more like a queen in her throne. And the human realized. He had not just survived her arrival. He had been chosen to face what came next. The test of courage. The soldier had survived the night, but he knew survival was only temporary. The jungle was not merciful, and neither was the tigress mother who watched him with eyes like burning gold. The cub slept against his side, soft, purrs rising and falling with each breath. The tigress lay beyond the fire, silent and still, but her gaze was sharp. It was not the gaze of an animal simply guarding her young. It was something more. She was measuring him, testing him. At dawn, the fire died down, leaving only glowing embers. Mist crept through the trees, wrapping the forest in ghostly silence. The soldier sat upright, his back stiff, his body aching from hours of stillness. He had not dared to sleep, not with death lying only a few feet away. Now the cub stirred, lifting its head and yawning. It padded toward him, rubbing its small body against his leg before skipping clumsily back to its mother. The tigress rose to her full height, her muscles rippling under striped fur that glowed faintly in the mist. The human had to tilt his head back just to look at her. She gave a low rumble, a sound that was not yet a growl, but not gentle either. It was a command, a warning, and a test, all in one. The soldier felt it deep inside. She wanted to see what he would do. Would he stand? Would he fight? Would he cower? He swallowed hard and slowly pushed himself to his feet. His legs trembled but held. He stood tall, though he was nothing compared to her size. His hands remained open at his sides, showing he carried no weapon. His heart thudded, but his eyes met hers, steady and calm. The tigress stepped closer. Her paws sank into the soft moss with heavy, deliberate steps. Each movement was slow, controlled, powerful. Her head lowered until her eyes were level with his chest. Her breath washed over him, hot and wild, smelling of meat and soil. She could kill him in one swipe. Yet she waited. The cub squeaked, watching, almost as if it too understood this moment. The soldier realized this was no random meeting, no simple accident. The tigress was testing his courage, his worth. If he failed, he would not live to see another sunrise. The human took a breath, steady and deep. Then, with deliberate slowness, he bent down and picked up a thick branch from the ground. Not as a weapon, but as a staff. He held it upright, planting it in the soil before him. He stood tall again, the branch firm in his grip, not threatening but unyielding. The tigress's eyes narrowed, her tail swishing once. Then suddenly, she moved. Her paw struck forward, lightning fast, slamming against the branch. The force nearly threw him backward. The wood cracked under the weight of her blow. But the soldier held his ground, his boots, digging deep into the moss. The cub squealed at the sudden strike, darting back in fear. The soldier's arms shook with the effort, his knuckles white on the branch. But he did not fall. He did not run. He stood, his chest heaving, staring back at her without breaking. The tigress pulled her paw back, her ears twitching. For a long, tense moment, the forest was silent again. Then she gave a low rumble, not anger this time, but something deeper, almost like approval. She circled him once more, her massive body brushing against the trees. Her tail flicked, striking his boot as she passed. The soldier stayed rooted, calm, steady. waiting. Finally, she returned to her cub, pressing her muzzle against its small head. The cub purred loudly, bouncing around her legs. The soldier let out a slow breath. He had passed. He was still alive. And more than that, he was accepted, if only for now. The tigress lowered herself to the ground again, curling around her cub. Her eyes no longer burned with the same rage as before. They still watched him, sharp and dangerous. But now there was something else in them. Recognition, the soldier's body sagged with exhaustion, but inside his heart burned with strange fire. He had faced her test and had not broken. He was not prey anymore. He was something else. Perhaps not friend, not yet, but no longer enemy. The forest around them slowly came alive again. Bird-like creatures chirped, strange insects buzzed, and the mist lifted with the rising sun. The soldier stood tall, gripping the cracked branch like a banner. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one truth. In the heart of an alien jungle, a human had faced a tigress mother, and, by courage alone, he had earned his place in her eyes. It was the first step toward something greater. A bond forged not by words, but by survival, by courage, by the test of the forest. And though the danger was far from gone, the soldier understood. This was not the end of his trial. It was only the beginning. An unlikely understanding. The forest was quiet after the test. The soldier stood holding the cracked branch, his breath slow, his body trembling from exhaustion. Across from him, the tigress mother rested with her cub nestled between her paws. Her eyes stayed on him, sharp and glowing. But her growl was gone. She had not killed him, not even when he dared to stand. That meant something. He had passed, though he did not yet know the true meaning of his survival. The cub yawned, stretching its tiny claws before scampering toward the human again. It pressed its small head against his boot, rubbing as if to claim him. The soldier bent down carefully, his hand brushing over the cub's thin fur. The creature purred, a sound soft but strangely comforting in the alien silence. The tigress's tail flicked once, warning, but she did not stop the cub. She was allowing it. That allowance was more powerful than any words. The soldier sat down slowly, lowering himself to the ground. He placed the broken branch beside him and pulled his knees close. He felt his hunger, his weakness, but for a moment those things did not matter. He had a strange warmth in his chest, something he had not felt since leaving Earth. It was the feeling of being trusted, even by something not human at all. The tigress shifted her massive head, watching. Her ears twitched as if catching sounds, far away. Every so often she sniffed the air, alert for threats. The human realized she was not just a predator. She was a protector, guarding not only her cub but now perhaps him as well. Hours passed. The soldier used his canteen sparingly, taking small sips of water. The cub followed him, tilting its head curiously each time he moved. When he tore a piece of dried cloth to wrap around his blistered hand, the cub tried to bite the fabric playfully. The soldier chuckled under his breath, though the sound felt strange after so many days of silence. The tigress lifted her head at the sound, her golden eyes narrowing, but instead of growling, she only blinked slowly. It almost looked like understanding. The soldier knew this bond was fragile. One wrong move and he could be ripped apart. But the fact that he was still alive meant something bigger. He thought about the war, about his lost unit, about the orders that had brought him to this jungle. None of it seemed real anymore. What was real was here. An alien mother, her cub, and him. 3 lives drawn together by hunger and survival. As evening fell, the forest grew darker again. The air filled with the calls of unseen creatures. Shadows stretched long across the moss. The soldier gathered small branches and lit another fire with the last of his matches. The flames flickered, and the cub immediately curled beside him, for warmth. The tigress watched carefully but did not stop it. Instead, she lay down a few feet away, her body half in shadow, half in firelight. Her glowing stripes shimmered like molten metal under the heat. The soldier spoke softly, though he knew she could not understand. "I guess we're Stuck together, he whispered. His voice was calm, almost gentle. It had been so long since he had spoken to anyone. The words carried into the forest, fragile, but alive. The tigress tilted her head, her ears twitching at the sound of his voice. For a strange moment it seemed she was listening. The cub purred louder, pressing closer against him. It was thin, still weak from hunger. The soldier reached into his pack, though he knew he had nothing left to give. He sighed, frustration and guilt heavy in his chest. He had given his last ration bar, and now he had nothing. Yet when the cub licked his hand as if grateful anyway, the soldier felt his heart tighten. It didn't matter that he had nothing left. He had given enough to earn trust. Suddenly a sound echoed through the forest, a deep guttural roar, not from the tigress but from somewhere far away. The tigress's head snapped up, her ears sharp, her body stiff. The cub pressed closer to the soldier in fear. The human's instincts kicked in. Danger was near. Something else hunted these woods, and unlike her, it might not accept his presence. The tigress growled low, warning the unseen threat. Her body rose, towering again, every muscle tense. The soldier gripped his broken branch, holding it tight. Though he knew it was almost useless, but he stood. He did not hide behind her, he stood beside her, his eyes fixed on the dark tree line. The tigress noticed. Her golden eyes flicked to him for a brief moment. There was no fear in him now, only determination. He would not abandon the cub. He would not run. Whatever came from the shadows, he would face it. The roar came again, closer. This time, shaking the ground, the tigress answered with one of her own. Loud, commanding, powerful. The cub whimpered, hiding between both of them. The soldier's grip tightened, his heart hammering. But strangely, he felt calm. He was no longer alone. For the first time, he felt they were not enemies, but allies. The night stretched forward, danger pressing from the shadows. The soldier knew a greater test was coming, but inside, he also knew one truth. Something had changed between him and the tigress. He was not prey anymore. He was part of her world now, and in her world, survival meant standing together. A night of uneasy peace. The forest was alive with whispers of danger. The roar that echoed earlier still lingered in the soldier's ears. Every shadow seemed alive. Every rustle in the leaves felt like the step of a predator. The cub pressed tightly against him, trembling, its small body seeking comfort. And beside them the tigress mother stood tall, her glowing stripes brightening as her muscles tensed. She was ready to defend her young, ready to face whatever lurked beyond the trees. The soldier gripped his cracked branch. His palms were sweating, his throat dry. He knew the branch would not save him if the danger came close, but he refused to drop it. It was not a weapon. It was his promise. His courage. If the tigress fought, then so would he. The jungle grew silent again, only the fire crackled softly, its light dancing across the alien trees. The unseen beast that roared did not come forward. Maybe it had sensed the tigress and decided to wait. Or maybe it was only testing the ground just as she had tested him. Minutes stretched into hours. The soldier's body begged for rest, his eyelids heavy, his stomach hollow. But he forced himself to stay awake. If he slept now, he might never open his eyes again. The cub curled tighter against his chest, purring faintly in its sleep. The warmth of its small body gave him strength. For the first time in days, he did not feel completely empty. The tigress circled once, her massive paws moving silently. She stopped across from him, her glowing eyes staring through the darkness. Her ears twitched, catching every sound in the forest. Then she lowered herself to the ground, lying half-curled around the cub and half facing the human, her tail flicked once, brushing the moss. It was not a threat this time, it was something else, perhaps a sign that she allowed him to stay close. The soldier leaned back against the thick root of a tree. He exhaled slowly, trying to ease the tension in his chest. He whispered softly, not to her but to himself. I shouldn't be alive right now. His voice cracked with exhaustion, but speaking felt human, and it reminded him he was not only prey in this alien world, The tigress blinked slowly, her glowing stripes fading slightly as her body relaxed. She was not asleep. He knew that by the way her ears still moved, but she was calmer. For the first time since meeting her, the air was not heavy with threat. It was heavy with something stranger. Acceptance. The soldier thought of Earth, of warm sunlight, of the voices of his unit. He wondered if they were even alive, or if he had been forgotten already. But when he looked down at the cub, he felt a small spark of purpose. Even here, lost and broken, he still had something worth protecting. The night dragged on once the fire nearly died. The soldier stirred, reaching for fallen twigs to keep it alive. The cub stirred too, squeaking faintly before settling again. The tigress's head lifted at his movement, her eyes sharp. But when she saw him feeding the flames, she lowered her head once more. It was a small thing, yet powerful. She trusted him enough not to strike. The soldier sat quietly, staring into the fire. Its flickering light cast shadows across his face. He realized he was beginning to read her. Her growls, her tail, her eyes, each had meaning, and he wondered if in her way she was learning to read him too. At one point a sudden screech came from the treetops. The cub leapt awake, pressing against him in fear. The soldier placed his hand gently on its back, steadying it. The tigress's growl rumbled low and deep, warning the unseen creature above. The sound faded, the danger passed, and again silence returned. The soldier leaned his head back against the root. He felt exhaustion pulling at him, but in that exhaustion, he also felt a strange peace. He was still alive. The cub trusted him, and the tigress had not killed him. It was more than he had hoped for when he had wandered into the jungle starving and alone. Slowly, his eyes drifted half-closed. He fought the sleep, but his body betrayed him. The cub curled beside him once more, its tiny purr steady, and the tigress, she lay like a guardian at the edge of the firelight, her gaze still on him, sharp but calm, as if she too knew he was now part of this fragile circle. The soldier slept lightly, never fully gone. He dreamed of glowing eyes and soft purrs, of firelight and shadows, and when the first hint of dawn touched the treetops, he opened his eyes. The cub was still beside him, alive, breathing, safe. The tigress had not left. Her eyes still watched him, golden and endless. It was not friendship, not yet. It was not trust, not fully. But it was peace, a dangerous, uneasy peace, and in this alien jungle, that was worth more than gold. The legend begins. The first rays of dawn broke through the alien trees. The forest glowed with strange colors, mist curling around the roots like silver smoke. The soldier opened his tired eyes, his body aching but alive. Beside him the cub stretched and purred softly, and just beyond the fading firelight, the tigress mother lifted her head, her golden eyes catching the morning sun. He had survived. Another night, but survival was not the only thing that mattered now. Something had changed. The cub no longer feared him, and the tigress no longer tested him. Instead, they had accepted his place in their small circle, a circle of danger but also of something far greater, understanding. The soldier stood slowly, his movements careful. His cracked branch still lay by his side, a reminder of his test. The tigress's gaze followed him unblinking. The cub padded to his feet, rubbing its small head against his leg as if it belonged there. He bent down, running his hand gently over its fur. The sound of its purr carried through the still air. The tigress rumbled softly, low and steady. Not anger, not threat, only warning. Remember your place. The soldier nodded slightly, as if, answering her without words, he did remember. He was not her equal, not her kind, but he had been allowed to live, and that alone made this moment extraordinary. The jungle, however, did not care for peace. As the sun climbed higher, the silence broke. A roar thundered through the trees, deeper and louder than before. It was the same predator that had tested them in the night, now closer, now hungrier. The cub froze in fear, hiding behind the soldier's legs. The tigress rose to her full height, her stripes burning bright as fire. Her growl shook the earth. Answering the challenge, the soldier's heart raced, but this time he did not think of running. He gripped the branch again, planting it firm into the ground. He stood beside her, not behind her. His voice was steady, though no one could understand his words. "If you fight, then so will I." The undergrowth shook violently. A massive beast emerged, larger than the tigress, armored with thick scales. Its jaws dripping with venom, its eyes burned with hunger, locked onto the cub. The tigress leapt forward, roaring, her claws tearing into the ground as she faced it head-on. The cub whimpered, pressing closer against the human. The soldier knew he could not protect it alone, but he refused to let it stand undefended. He shouted, raising the branch high, his voice echoing through the forest. It was not a roar like hers, but it was human courage, raw and fierce. The predator struck, its jaws snapping at the tigress. She dodged, slashing across its face, leaving glowing blood splattering the moss. The soldier thrust his branch forward, striking the beast's side with all his strength. The branch cracked, nearly splintering. The predator turned its head toward him, rage burning in its eyes. In that instant, death felt certain, but before it could lunge, the tigress crashed into it, forcing it back with the weight of her fury. The jungle shook with the sounds of battle. Snarls, roars, and the cracking of trees filled the air. The soldier kept shouting, waving the broken branch, standing tall beside the cub. The tigress fought like a storm, claws and fangs flashing. The predator struck hard, but she struck harder. At last, with a final roar, she drove it back into the shadows, bleeding and defeated. The forest fell silent again. The soldier collapsed. To his knees, gasping for breath, sweat ran down his face, his arm shaking from the effort. The cub crawled into his lap. Purring weakly, the tigress returned, her fur torn and bleeding, but her eyes blazing with victory. She stood before him, towering, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. For a moment, her gaze burned into him like fire. Then, slowly, she lowered her head, just enough to touch her nose against his shoulder. It was not affection, not in human terms, but it was recognition. It was respect. The soldier froze, his heart pounding. He had faced her test before, but this was different. Now, after the battle, she had chosen him, not as prey, not as enemy, but as something else. A protector beside her, a guardian of her cub. The cub squeaked happily, pressing against them both. The soldier smiled faintly, though exhaustion weighed on him. He looked into the tigress's golden eyes and saw no rage, only acknowledgement. And in that moment he understood. This story was no longer his alone. It belonged to all three of them. By the time the sun burned high above the trees, the forest had returned to life. Bird creatures sang, insects buzzed, and the mist lifted into the air. But deep in the jungle, a new legend had been born. The Sao story of a human soldier who fed a starving cub, who faced the tigress mother and lived, who stood beside her in battle and was spared. The locals would whisper of it, the soldiers would hear rumors, and the jungle itself would remember, for the alien tigress and her cub had not killed the human. They had walked beside him, and in a galaxy filled with war and fear, that was something no one would ever forget. The soldier looked at the cub in his lap, then at the tigress by his side. A faint smile crossed his tired face. Whatever came next, he was no longer alone. He was part of a legend now. The legend of the man who fed the cub and earned the respect of its mother.